Welcome to video number 2. Today what we're going to be talking about is absolute value functions. We're going to be writing the equations rather than graphing them. So what we're going to be doing is looking at the graph, identifying the important pieces, and then writing the equation. So if you recall in the last video, here's the general function. This y equals ax minus h plus k. Remember that h and k determine our vertex, and the a value determines whether the figure opens up or down, and it also determines the slope for the sides of the absolute value function. So the vertex, if we look over here on the right side, is this point right here. It already gives us that it's 4, 3. So that's super nice because that's a lot of information. The a value, this is where it gets a little bit trickier because we are trying to figure out the slope. So if you recall, to find slope, the equation is y equals y1 minus y2, excuse me, it's not y equals, m equals over x1 minus x2. So that's one way that you could go about doing it, and then you just plug in those values. Or we could just try to interpret based off of the graph, and we could count out the spaces. So since it's rise over run, we can just figure how far up does it go from one point and how far down, or how far to the left and right does it go. So if we look at this point right here, looks like we go over, if we're talking about rise, we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, and then we go over 1, 2, 3. So if we go up 6 over 3, 6 over 3 reduces to just 2. But since this graph is opening down, we know that it has to be -2. Okay? The domain of this, just like in the last series, it's all real numbers because there's no restrictions on it. Now the range, we have to think about, well, what's the highest point or the lowest point possible? In this case, the highest y value is 3. So y is compared to 3 somehow. Now, is it greater than or equal to or less than or equal to? The answer is going to be less than or equal to because it's going down. Now we have all the information that we need. That equals a. So we know that it's y equals, we discovered that the a value is -2. Then we have x minus h. In this case, since it's +4 in the coordinate form, it's going to be negative once we put it back in the equation. And then k is just +3. That stays the same. There we go. There's our first equation. Okay, the next part, write an equation of the graph here. So first things first, identify the vertex. We already got it, -1, 3. The a value. So this time, let's look at these 2 points right here. I always like to just count it out. When we are together, I'll show you another way, and I might do it in a later example of how you calculate slope. But it's rise over run. So if we are talking about how high or low we go from one point to another, so this one we're going down 1, 2, 3, and then we're going over 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 3/4. We're going down 3 over 4, and since it's opening down, this has to be negative. So the a value is -3/4. And don't feel too bad if you get a fraction. That's going to happen pretty often. Domain, all real numbers, just like usual. The range is going to be y compared to our highest y value, and this one is 3. It's always going to be the k if you haven't noticed that. It's always compared to the k. But since it's going down, it's got to be less than or equal to 3. And now the equation. We have everything we need. Y equals, what's our a value? We discovered that right here. -3/4, absolute value of x. Now we look at our vertex. The h value here is -1. So once we plug it into the equation, it's opposite, so it's +1. And then plus k value is 3. So there we go. There's the equation. Continuing on. Example 3 is going to be the last one that we're going to do. I'm going to save example 4 for something we can talk about in class. So first things first, vertex. Nice easy point right here, 0, 2. Whenever you get 0 in the vertex, that is going to change how our equation looks in the final answer. Nothing too drastic, but just keep that in mind. The a value. For once we're going up, this is opening up, so we know a is going to be a positive number. So let's just pick another point. I'm just going to pick this point right here. So rise over run, so it looks like we're going up 1 over 2. So rise over run is 1 over 2. So a equals positive 1/2 since it's opening up. The domain of this one. So the domain, just like usual, all real numbers, no restrictions. The range, now that we're opening up, we always use y for the range. Our max or minimum y value in this case is positive 2. That's the k value. So since it's a minimum, all the values are going to be greater than or equal to 2. Now the equation itself is y equals a value is positive 1/2 x. Now 0 is the h value that comes from our vertex. If you have 0, you could put x minus 0 or x plus 0, but you don't need that, so we're just going to leave it off, because whenever you add or subtract 0, that's not going to change the x value. And then our k is plus 2. So inside all alone there is our x, but that's the equation. So if you understood how to graph it, I think that writing the equation is a little bit easier. But if you're really struggling with graphing the equations, please let me know. Try to reach out to me or save some of your questions for when we meet again. But hopefully you will watch both of these videos and attempt everything. Yeah, example 4 we'll do in class. So you just have 3 problems to attempt on your own down here.